All right. I'm just gonna call. Oh my God, it's so bright. Here you go. There's the mic. Please join me on stage. Jason Sherman, everyone, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. We're so happy to even see a film coming out of Toronto, and so nice to see a lot of familiar faces of those that attend TPFF always. I do have a few questions, but I do want to give a chance for the audience to ask a few questions as well. But I'm going to start off just by asking, like, how, because you, like, we all couldn't believe how far you got with the investigation. Like, you were able to gather so much information that isn't really accessible and transparent. And I was wondering if you can tell us how that journey felt.
As far as the investigation in Israel? Or?
In Israel, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's hi everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm very appreciative. This is my first time seeing it in the theater, so thank you. TPFF, it's quite an honor to be part of the festival. It's just really sort of basic, shoe leather, journalistic kind of work. I mean, I actually almost became a journalist before I decided to go into the theater. And so they're, very kind of related in a way to my work is this sort of asking questions and delving into things that I sort of take for granted, and then I want to know more and more. And the more I looked into it, the more the truth came out, and the more I realized I knew nothing about. I mean, I'm fairly well read on Israel and Palestine, and I knew nothing of the JNF, the history of the tree planting program. And so for me, it was really like what's depicted in the film is a very accurate reflection of my own kind of journey of understanding what that tree not only, physically is doing, but also what it represents, in the conflict, and how it really, literally came to cover up crime. And it's one of 240 million doing that, yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to be so far away from you.
No, it's COVID. Now you should see how people are going to ask questions. But before we give it to the audience, I wanted to see, like, was there anything that wasn't included in the film that you wanted to talk about or mention?
Yes, it's already kind of sort of tipping into maybe being a little too long, and I get, when we did the first assembly with my editor, God bless him, it was 14 hours long, and we sort of whittled and whittled and whittled. And there was one interview in particular that I really wanted to get in somehow. It was a very powerful interview with Gideon Levy, who's a Haaretz journalist. And if any of you are familiar with him, he's quite forthright, and he said some pretty amazing things, but some of what he said was also kind of covered in the other interviews, so I had to leave him out. And here and there were moments that had to go, but those are the decisions that you have to make. And along the way, there were many more people that I interviewed who I couldn't ultimately use for one reason or another, and there were people I just didn't get a chance to speak with for one reason or another. The JNF, they, as you can see in the film, I tried and I tried and I tried, and they denied me 3 times. There was a guy who has written a book on. It's actually called All the Trees in the Forest, so he does know where he speaks. And I was going to speak with him, and then I had to. I was going to do a return trip to Israel, and I had to cancel that for many reasons. Most of them having to do with the fact that it was going to be around the time that Trump decided to move the embassy to Jerusalem, and suddenly it became very untenable situation for me to get in there and shoot. There are all kinds of logistics that happen there, you can imagine. that are different from sort of shooting here, for example. So yeah, there were things that I did have to leave out, but I think, you know, in the end, it told the story that I set out to make. So
I'm wondering also, I'm curious about the Toronto community and how has or what you've noticed, like how has the film been received here?
well, you know, because it's been, as I say, this is the first in-person, in public, with a public screening of film. So it premiered at Hot Docs in April earlier this year, and you know, so it was all online. But I had the most amazing, incredible, you know, thoughtful, emotional emails and texts and notes that I've ever received for anything I've ever done, which includes, you know, 20 years, 25 years in the theater and many years in TV. And you can tell, you know, the difference when people write to you about something of yours that they've seen and are writing you to say congratulations or this or that. You can tell when it's just sort of pro forma, you know, congrats. And you can tell when something has affected people deeply. And you know, that it seemed to me that that's what was happening with people I was hearing from. Very long letters and you know, about how they felt learning the things that I learned in the film. And in a way, I can almost distill it into you know, a comment that somebody made. A Jewish woman who knew nothing of the history other than the history that she had been told and grew up with, and said to me, "Wow, there really is another side." And you know, this is someone in their 50s, and so that and there were a lot of people who reacted the same way, and were quite surprised and shocked, and also and understandably a lot of love and respect for Moya, an incredible person it was a happy accident that I got to meet him. Because I was actually on that same trip that I had to cancel because of the embassy move. I was going to go back to Canada Park, but this time with a gentleman who had been born there. And so when that trip was called off, I asked him if he knew anybody on my side of the ocean, and he put me in touch with.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I want to just see if there are any questions from the audience, and you're gonna have to scream, and I'm gonna have to repeat them because of, again, COVID. Just because we do have people joining us online, and I want to make sure everyone has a chance. So we have a question over here. Go ahead, and then over there. So go ahead.
Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for this incredible documentary. I learned so much. I'm from Nablus, born and raised there, so I never heard of IMWAS or even Canada Park, so this was such a learning opportunity for me. I wanted to know, I'm curious to know how you were able to find like about ideas from IMWAS. Like how were you able to find those people? Because now that I think about it, we can't really like document them anywhere. If there's anything, yeah.
So people from those villages in general, IMWAS in particular.
So the audience member asked, how were you able to find Moya from IMWAS?
So Moya came to me, or I went to him. We found each other through a very lucky circumstance, which is that I was going to interview a gentleman who'd been born in IMWAS, who I met. He was doing a lecture tour and stopped off at York University. He did a lecture about IMWAS, and so of course I went. I was in the middle of doing my research, and I told him about the film and that I would love to speak with him and maybe walk through Canada Park / IMWAS with him. He was all up for it. Had to cancel the trip. He, then asked him if he knew of anyone that I might be able to interview who was in North America, and he led me to Moya, which was quite fortunate. And I mean, he's a remarkable man, you can see. And then as far as other people that were born there or descendants, so there are organizations that I don't know if they track them, but they certainly are, places that have, like a website where folks talk about, commemorate MWAS. And there are people that are still fighting for compensation. If, for example, the gentleman I was going to meet with over there. But the fellow that takes me through Canada Park, Eitan Bronstein, he started an organization called Zuchrot, and they have tons of information, and they are kind of I shouldn't say they're aligned with, but there certainly are, there's some overlapping material with another amazing site called Palestine Remembered. So those are two great places to start. Palestine Remembered has incredible maps and all sorts of written history and visual history. Zuchrot has done a map, the map that we do showing the disappeared villages. We did that, but they have very simple, like incredibly detailed maps showing the same thing. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely want to check that out.
And on that note, we actually screened a film at TPFF a few years ago. It was called MWAS. I can't remember who directed it, Daniel, but please be sure to approach us after, because it was an amazing, eye-opening film. It was a documentary film.
Is that about the people that they've done recreated a model?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's quite it's an amazing documentary. There was another question there and then there. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for this movie. I had a question about your sort of process. Did you think before you did the film, were you contemplating the tree, or were you searching for, like sort of, how did it happen? Maybe I missed it at the start of the movie, but yeah, I would like to know your thinking process. Were you sort of wanting to do something to question, like how did you just wake up one day and say, my tree,
Sorry, Jason, I'm just
Sorry.
going to repeat it for no worries. I blame COVID for everything. Yeah, the audience member is curious to know your process. Did you wake up one day thinking that you want to find out where your tree was and how it led you to this investigation? If you can elaborate on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that question. That's actually something I did have to leave out, is the story of, well, part of the story. I mean, I do talk about it a little bit in the opening section, but the part that I had to leave out is that, and I mentioned before, a playwright, I've written plays on, Israel, Palestine, on, being a Jew in the modern, in contemporary times, relationship with Israel, et cetera, et cetera. And then I kind of went away from that for a while, and I'd never even been to Israel. My plays were not about, Israel per se, but about, Israel and Palestine how they, in the diaspora, in the imagination, and the reality too of the diaspora. So I stepped away from that for a while, and then I was actually invited to Israel to attend a theater conference, and it was my first trip. And it got me thinking again about all these things that I had once thought about a lot. And like the two cousins that I interviewed in the film had gone very deep into reading all the books and all that stuff, and and talking about it through the plays and so on. And so when I was in Israel for the first time is when I thought I actually think it was the thought that came to me as it was all sort of coming up again, all the stuff that I used to think about a lot, was the tree. It literally, as I say in the film, that's my thought, the tree. I got a tree here. And as ridiculous as that kind of sounds, it really, for me, was, I thought, well, it's actually a way for me to talk about all the stuff that I talked about before, written about before, but through the prism of something that, on the face of it, is a very simple, pure thing, a tree. I just went, okay, so that is my literal connection to Israel. Maybe I can find it. And really, it did lead from there. The dominoes all fell. I had never, my only knowledge of the JNF, the Planters of Trees, was I think I would occasionally see the letters JNF on signage as I drive up to where my parents used to live up at Bathurst and Steeles. That was it. So everything I found out, everything I know about the JNF, I know since starting the film, research on the film, 8 years ago. So, I don't know, does that kind of answer your?
Yeah.
We have another question there.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, and I learned a lot that I had no idea about. I noticed that we also met quite a few of your family members through this experience. I was wondering how your brothers felt about their pieces of land or trees and other family members, I guess, while you went through the process of learning more about it.
Yeah, so the audience member is asking how your family and your brothers felt.
So I have 7 brothers, and two of whom, well, two of whom you see as they are now, one of whom you see as he was when he was 13 years old. And as you can imagine, with that, that range of people, in the same family, there are a range of opinions. It's interesting. My youngest and eldest brothers are quite committed to Israel, but they also, or should I say, and they also? Well, in any case, they appreciated the journey of the film. They, I'm not going to stand here and say that I've converted them to any cause, and that they're going to, take up with the people who are holding the signs during the Walk for Israel fundraiser. But they, and sometimes it takes time. So we had some discussion immediately after they watched the film during hot dogs. But it's, we, and partly because of COVID, we just haven't sat around and had a great long discussion about it. But they're appreciative. I think they're appreciative in the same way that many people that I've heard from are, because of the tone of the film. And I was very conscious of not making it a finger-pointing exercise. And I wanted to listen to people. I wanted to hear other people's stories and insights. And it wasn't for me to then challenge people based on what I had learned along the way. Here and there, yes, but not in a way that in a showy way, meant to elicit a kind of gotcha moment or whatever the case may be. So I think because I took this, it's not I took this approach, it's just how I am. I want to hear how what people have to say, and put it all together. I think that kind of has this, people see that, and it's not about shouting at each other. It's about trying to listen, and which is why I so love what Moye says at the end. It really is what he's saying. It's so genuine.
I'm actually just wondering a very quick question. I just thought about it. Are people able to ask to remove the trees that were gifted for them? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know if you can ask for them to be removed. I think, but I do know of a group of people from, I believe, South Africa. And it was documented in a film, another film about JNF that was done many years ago, called The Village Under the Forest, The Village Beneath the Forest, something like that. who went and met with people who had been living in the village that their trees are covering, and they gave them the certificates to do with them as, I don't know if they had a kind of a burning ceremony or there was something like that. But as far as, you know, JNF removes, tear down that tree, no, I don't think, and they would respond
Yeah.
anyway. And also, they would just say, one tree, good luck, which is what they told me, good luck finding one tree.
Yeah. We have a question over there, and then there.
First, I want to thank you for the great documentary. I was surprised at myself for, I'm sorry to say that, but listening to an Israeli guy and his point of view, that was for me a breaking point because it was a turning point, sorry. And I'm very proud of what I saw, but I agree, I do have a question for you as a small Jewish guy who was raised in a house supported Jews and Israelis in the bigger picture. After you go into Palestine and after you go into all that and learning all these facts, where does your heart belong now?
Where does Jason's heart belong now?
It belongs with wanting to keep seeking justice for the Palestinian people. Because they have suffered tremendously with, while essentially being libeled and slandered over the years, and the true story of their expulsion covered up. So I do want to say that, and also I have to say, I'm not here calling for the end of Israel. I am calling for Israel to address this need for justice that is crying out. Right? And I think you said something about that as a Jew growing up in a house supporting Israel. It sort of, only in as, insofar as I was a Jew I am a Jew in the diaspora. Growing up in a conservative Jewish household that ipso facto, was supportive of Israel. So it's not that my journey isn't from, ardent Zionist to, ardent anti-Zionist. It's from growing up in a home, in a community, in a culture that values truth and questioning and ensuring justice for historical wrongs, because of the Holocaust. And then coming to the realization that, or starting to question the possibility that those goals can only apply to us. And why is it that when we try to apply them to another people, we are shut down, criticized, as the people in the truck do to the demonstrators during the walk. So I've always, not always, but from a very young age, had this kind of questioning approach to life in general and to assumptions and so on. But it really was that idea, because it really is drilled into you that, as a Jew, we always have to question things and push for, almost like push for the underdog, support the underdog. Except, in this one instance, I'm sure you know the very, famous line about, progressive except for Palestine. This that applies to some members of the left or liberal movement. Progressive except for Palestine. It's the one thing that you kind of you stop with that. And it's because the story has been told one way. It's changing now. I mean, you know, my film is part of, I think, a changing narrative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have to wrap up, but I do want to give you a chance to ask your question.
It's a quick question. My question is, were there any difficulties, not in terms of making, but also in terms of publishing this film? Like, and how did that go?
Did you have any difficulties publishing the films, and how did it go?
Well,
Go ahead.
first thing I have to say is, God bless and that's small g, God bless the Arts Councils. As I say in the credits, without them, this film would not exist. You know, the reality is, it's places like this where the film's going to have a chance to be seen. So the Arts Council's allowed it to get made, and festivals are where it's playing. I am still hopeful, though not optimistically so, of a broadcast license, so that hopefully more people have a chance to see it. But, you know, we do live in a country where the national broadcaster has an actual stated policy to not use the word Palestine. So you can imagine how they might respond to a film like this. But having said that, there are still a couple of outlets out there that might find some space for it. I doubt it, but yeah, it's if you want to see a programmer running fast, pitch them a story about Israel and Palestine, like this one. Clear the room pretty quickly.
I'm sorry, we have to wrap up, but Jason, if you're sticking around, maybe people can approach you for any questions after the film. Thank you guys so much, and thank you so much for joining us.